The main thing that we're talking about is, so WebScale did this really interesting survey, and what we did was we reached out to a database of e-commerce companies. A lot of them are sort of in the mid-market, a lot of them at the very high end. So we got some really interesting brands to respond to us in a very detailed survey. We're actually publishing the details of that survey soon. I think later this week, it'll officially be released. There's some large retail publications that'll write about it. But in the meantime, I'll share some snapshots and some early information about what we found in the survey. So about 350 different brands responded to the survey. The focus for us was to talk about the holiday season for 2018. So as you all know, the holiday season is probably the most important for most of the retailers that you work with. These retailers will, it's called, in the US they call it Black Friday. And the reason it was called Black Friday, which I'm sure is not new news to any of you, is that's the day where customers go from being in the red, as in pretty much investing in the business, to start generating profit starting Black Friday. So that's the reason where the term Black Friday came into play. As the internet evolved and people went from brick and mortar retail into more e-commerce, we've started seeing Cyber Monday. So Cyber Monday, or now it's called Cyber Week in the US. In the India market, it's slightly different. I think Diwali season is the big, call it Cyber Week over here. And then there's sales that happen across the board. Different parts in like China, they have Singles Day. Alibaba does a big event then. So the whole world has got sort of their own peak of when they believe e-commerce starts to move into the black. But for the US and pretty much a lot of the, call it Western European market, Black Friday is a big deal. So 350 different brands responded to our survey. Wanted to share some of the lessons learned, and then towards the end, I'll also talk a little bit more about WebScale and what we do. Our personal story around Cyber Monday and Black Friday is, for the last 3 years, we have had, this year we served about 1,000 different brands on our platform. Last year we had about 600 brands. The year before that we had about 350 brands. Every year we have 100% uptime across all of our brands on the WebScale platform. That is huge because these customers go from X to like 3X, 5X, 10X. They see walls of traffic. They do some really interesting things in terms of sales. And then the traffic goes back down. And the way that we're able to do it is by leveraging cloud resources and really scaling up to the demand and then scaling back in once the traffic goes away. So that's our strength. And what we talk about is 100% uptime with security, performance, availability across all of these brands. So it's really interesting when we hear some of the data. Now, I will caution you that when you ask a brand about how they did during Black Friday, did they have any security events, did they have any performance-related events, it's not always 100% accurate. It's usually accurate if they're sharing openly. But if they had a problem, it's very rare that they'll tell you they had a problem. So just know that when you see these numbers, in your mind, you work with enough retailers to know, do you have exact information, or is the situation actually a lot worse than what we see here? So just make your own adjustments to this data. This is offered up by these retailers themselves, and in a lot of detail in some cases. So we were pretty surprised as to how open some of them were with us on the problems they faced. So what we did was, again, reached out to about 350 different companies across the world and asked them about information, detailed feedback across their performance requirements, availability, security requirements. And then we focused on things like slow page load times. What does slow mean to you? Does 3 seconds mean slow? Does 5 seconds mean slow? The meaning of slow actually changes. Different geographies have a different understanding of slow. In the US, it's like 2-3 seconds, and people are just impatient and they'll leave. In Asia Pac, people are a little bit more patient. So 4 seconds, 5 seconds is acceptable. I'd say in the India market, people who get a 6-second response time, they're not very upset with themselves. They're actually pretty happy. And then we'll look at more details. So overall, 76% of e-commerce companies that responded to our survey, the 350 people, said that their more than half their revenue was generated in the fourth quarter. So October, November, December. And I think that is pretty much a global phenomenon, whether it's in India, where you have your peak Diwali season and a lot of the revenue is spent there. Or you look at the US, you've got Cyber Week. You look at other parts of the world where there's Christmas shopping and so on and so forth. Half the revenue is generated in the fourth quarter. What does that mean in terms of overall infrastructure? That means that people built for the fourth quarter and spend that kind of money the entire year to make sure that fourth quarter goes according to plan. So just kind of keep that metric in mind as we talk through the rest of it. And another 6.5% of people said it was between 50 and 75%. So they're actually trickling in terms of traffic, and then all of a sudden everything peaks up, and then it kind of goes away, and then they start. We find most of our customers in January, like last week of December, January, it's complete silence across our customers. No one opens support tickets, no one's complaining about anything, no one has any needs. They go on vacation. In Australia, we find people are on vacation all the way till the first week of February. It's so quiet and calm across that customer base that we serve. But in the US, fourth quarter, like start from July all the way till the end of this time, it's crazy season. You literally cannot get anybody's attention. So it's a very interesting world that we all live in. Most of us have worked in traditional infrastructure in the past, and we found it's a year-long process in information technology. But e-commerce is so unique that it's usually 4 or 5 months of just intensity, and then the rest of the year is recovering from that intensity. So that's what we found in terms of numbers. And again, we'll publish this entire survey with all the findings on every front, and soon you'll be able to go to our website and download it. And we're also releasing it across some outlets we can share with you. In terms of Cyber Monday, this is the information that Adobe shared at the end of 2018 as well. So Adobe is the parent company of Magento. As you all know, Magento has been acquired for about $1.7 billion by Adobe. That's the kind of metrics that they're sharing. Is earlier, Thanksgiving, everybody was closed. Every store was closed on Thanksgiving. Now the world has changed. Thanksgiving, 4 p.m., everybody opens their door. So you go eat your turkey and your everything else and your mashed potatoes, and then you rush out and you start shopping. So they've pulled Black Friday all the way into Thursday, and you shop all the way through to Black Friday. But interestingly, with e-commerce changing the retailer's world, Cyber Monday is almost twice as big as the Saturday before it, right? And it's the biggest day. So we're finding our customers now they earlier had to prepare for Black Friday, now they're having to prepare for Cyber Monday in an even bigger way. So they're using Black Friday as a test bed for Cyber Monday because that's where they get a majority of their revenue. So that's the kind of infrastructure we're seeing across the board. Now, you would think that we would have solved all these problems, right? You would think that brands like Barney's, that has no shortage of budget, they're massive. Every perfume in their store is $300-400, and you've all seen their site. You would think they've solved the problem by now of being able to scale to demand. They predict their users, they know how many people are going to come to their site, they know what promotions they're offering. They go down pretty much regularly. You see brands like Ulta Beauty, Lowe's, massive brands that have billions in revenue as well as budget, still have issues in Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And we can understand for the life of us why they're doing that. In today's day and age where the cloud is available to all of us to build a utility infrastructure and really make a site scalable, why do these guys still have these outages? But downtime is still a big deal. So keep in mind, 24% of people have self-reported 5 minutes of downtime at a time where one of our customers actually told me that every minute of downtime on their site is $10,000. So for me, just that metric was crazy. That for $10,000 a minute, you cannot afford downtime. Not even a minute, not even half a minute. 24% of people actually self-admitted to having downtime. So you can all, any guesses on what that actual number probably was? What do you guys think? Is it really 24%? Is it double of 24%? I'd say half of these brands had downtime. That's the reason they answered our survey. That's the reason they're interested in knowing more, right? Because that's the kind of issues. Like 5 minutes of downtime, people are just like, yes, it's terrible. I don't want to have downtime, but everybody has downtime. That's not the case, guys. Everybody does not need to have downtime across the board. So that's the kind of things that we saw. 5.5% of these storefronts, so 5.5% of 350, you can do the math, had more than 30 minutes of downtime. That just blows my mind. Like, how can you be down for 30 minutes? In today's day and age, when you have so much infrastructure at your disposal, how can you be down for 30 minutes? But they self-reported that they had more than 30 minutes of downtime. My guess is that number is more than 10%. So 10% of 350 is 35 of these brands were down for more than half an hour. You can imagine the revenue loss. I mean, people talk about, shoplifting is the biggest problem for brick and mortar retailers. That's where they have the maximum revenue leakage. This is a big problem, and this is very fixable. So you kind of get an idea of what's going on in these stores. Now, slow is the new down, right? That's our belief. We believe that if a site is slow, in people's minds is just down, because we are all living in this world of all of our devices, all of our gadgets, our laptops. I mean, how many of us have the patience, right? If I want a pair of jeans, I'll go to one store, I don't find it there, or the page is downloading slowly, or it's saying, please slow down or come back later, you're going into a waiting room. I have no interest in shopping at that store. I'll go to another store and buy jeans, right? Because it's out there. I'm sure all of you have dealt with the same thing. You go to a travel website, you're trying to buy an air ticket, it's too slow, I'm just going to go somewhere else. So slow is down, right? And especially in places where in the US, 3 seconds is just like about the amount of time that people are going to wait. Otherwise, they're going to go elsewhere. It is different when people start to build brand loyalty. That's different. If people can depend on a brand and say, I really want this brand, they're going to wait for a little bit more. So people that have brand loyalty or a differentiated product, they get a little bit more leeway in terms of slowness. But people that don't have that deep brand loyalty or are building a storefront that's selling electronics or headphones or jeans or t-shirts or whatever, something just out there. And there are hundreds of brands like that all across India, all across the US. People have very little patience with those kinds of brands. They will be punished because they're slow. So slow becoming down is really, some of the metrics you should look at is 56% of these online storefronts, self-reported, had load times of more than 3 seconds. And 3 seconds is the benchmark of a slow website, right? Across the board. More than 30% of them said they were slower than 5 seconds on page load times. And these are all the main page load times. Right? We're not talking about product pages or category pages or all the way deep inside. These are the main sites. 9% of these sites said that they have page load times of 9 seconds or more. Incredibly slow. With all of the technology that's available to us, whether it's caching or it's delivering at the edge, dynamic site caching or third-party deferment, or all of these tools that we have at our disposal. And our belief, at least as a company at WebScale, our belief is that there is this technology, but these e-commerce companies don't really understand that there's so much technology available to them. And it's up to people like us in this room to say, let us make your life easier. Let us show you that there's a better way to do it. Barney's doesn't need to be down. They need to work with the right partner to make sure that they can get 100% uptime. Because it's possible, and it's not that expensive to be able to achieve it, especially in the day of cloud plus software. You can do it. You just need to know who to work with. So this is the biggest thing that we have seen change. I joined WebScale in 2015. Everybody was talking about, how can you make my site faster? How can you make my site faster? Fast forward to 2018, half my customers' conversations were, I have these challenges with security on my site. My credit cards are getting siphoned. I'm getting all of this challenge. There's people trying to constantly hawk into my admin portal. There's all of these issues that are happening. Help me with security. And very few of them were still complaining about performance. Now, granted, it's our customer base, so our customer base is fast, right? Because that's what we do. What we do is, I'll talk about it in some future slides, but we really help these customers get access to the highest end of security, performance, availability, all of that good stuff. But the conversation around security has gone from here to here. And if I had to rank across the board on what is the most important thing to our customers or what we see, we actually are seeing security at the top. Now, performance is still very, very important. Don't get me wrong. It's not like they don't care about performance, but we actually have customers who say things like, don't serve any of my users that still come on TLS 1.0. Just reject them. Only TLS 1.2 and higher. And because I care about the credit card information on my site, I care about who's shopping in my site. So there's these kinds of comments that come at the very high end of the Fortune companies. They'll say, block everybody who is not qualified to shop at my site. And so that's the kind of changes we're seeing across the board. I'm sure all of you are saying the same. So 21% of e-commerce storefronts admitted to experiencing security-related incidents. Is that scary for any of us? Because I do all of my shopping online. Every single bit. I mean, I bought this online, I bought my pants online, I bought my shoes online. So for somebody like me that has my credit card in at least 5 places right now, and 21% of them are admitting to having security-related decisions, what does that do? So we as consumers, at least the ones that are aware, that have the understanding, are asking the questions of, what are you doing to secure my information, right? And as they ask more questions, your brand or your e-commerce company's brand depends on how they focus on security. This is critical. This is more critical than anything else that you're doing for them. So Others likely did too, but didn't realize their impact, or they don't want to talk about it. Because in the US especially, if you have a security incident, do you know who deals with the security incidents in the US? We found out, because one of our customers, in a conversation, we found that before they came on board with WebScale, for the last 4 years, somebody had something installed at the back end of their infrastructure and was siphoning out credit cards for 4 years from their site. The Secret Service. The Secret Service takes care of the president, which is interesting. But the Secret Service also takes care of online fraud. So anything that happens on any customer's website has to be reported to the Secret Service. So that's how seriously, at least in the US, they take this information. This is becoming critical. People who find out have to admit to it. They're personally liable. So pretty important. Now, DDoS attacks. You've all heard of DDoS attacks, distributed denial of service attacks, where somebody takes a massive server farm and blasts your site. This increased by 70% on Black Friday compared to other days. Now, the interesting thing is that the DDoS attacks in the past were just pushing traffic on your site to a point where your site fell down. The DDoS attacks of today are not as they were in the past. They're more attacks on your admin page. There are people running through a bunch of passwords trying to break into your admin site. So those are the kind of attacks that we are seeing that are becoming more prevalent. They're smarter. These hackers are smarter in how they're trying to break into our sites. And the number one challenge, half of them said it was either downtime, site slowdown, cyber threats, or all of the above, right? There is a need to get this comprehensive view to their sites and make sure that they're performing in a certain way. And again, this is not 10 people that are responding. This is not 30 people that are responding. There's 350 different brands that have responded to the survey. And we actually sent it out, I have my director of marketing here. We sent it out to our entire database to get them to get information. So this kind of gives you an idea of, and half of them said, I don't have any problems. We all know in this room how accurate that information is. Is it possible that half of them didn't have any problems? So that kind of tells you that if half of them are claiming that they had problems, this is big. And this is an opportunity for all of us, because we're all in the same ecosystem. Our entire partner network is developers. That's who we work with very closely. So the road ahead, what does 2019 look like for a lot of these companies? 6.1% of these merchants are looking for a solution for site performance. They're in the market ready to shop for a site performance solution, whether it's a CDN or it's a dynamic site cache or it's a web scale or some version thereof. 25% of them want to eliminate downtime, 24.1%, which means they don't want to go down Black Friday because every minute of downtime is a big deal, right? Whether it's Diwali or Black Friday, it's just different terminology across different parts of the world. And about 30% of them want to upgrade their security infrastructure. So security is obviously one of their biggest problems, even though if you notice the percentage of people who admitted to having security incidents is actually far lower than the ones who actually want to fix their security problem. So that kind of gives you the math right there. So quick introduction to WebScale. Now, the rest of this is me talking about what we do. And the reason this is important is I think the biggest responsibility that we carry as a team is we've come up with a really unique, really simple way of solving a lot of the skills gap that e-commerce companies face. And when we start talking to our customers, the biggest thing that we hear from our prospects is, I wish I had known about you sooner. I wish we knew WebScale existed. I have an existing contract with XYZ managed hosting company. And so that's what we have to do is we just have to wait for that contract to end and start working with WebScale. That's the biggest thing that we have as a challenge is most people haven't heard about us. So that's why I'm here. That's why we're having this conversation. And I'll make the rest of this really fast because I think there's, I can see our next speaker, who's, by the way, also a woman. This is interesting, guys. This is great. But yeah, we're trying to bridge the gap here. So this is what WebScale does, is we build technology and cloud automation to provide infinite scalability. And when I say infinite, I truly mean infinite. Customers can go from 100,000 visitors on their site a month to 5 million visitors and back to 100,000. We will scale on demand. Now, the way we do scaling, and you all have probably heard of the word auto-scaling. WebScale has patents in what we call predictive auto-scaling, which is way above Amazon standard auto-scaling. And what it does is it looks at your response time on your site, and we focus on response time. So we're built for e-commerce. We focus on maintaining response time. And this is server response time. This is not just some random user clicking on your site trying to get that. How quickly your server responds to a request is what we care about. So server response time is what we track. We use infrastructure as a service from an existing cloud provider, and then we run our software on it. So we see response time, we see CPU, we see memory, we see all of that, and then we scale out based on demand. Comprehensive security, so right from a web application firewall that does blacklisting, whitelisting, geofencing to a full-scale cloud bot manager, the WebScale stack has all of this included. So every one of our customers gets access to our security stack. The bot manager is an additional upgrade for enterprise customers, but kind of gives you an idea that it's built in. And then performance. So we are a CDN. We use the cloud network to deliver the content, but we are a CDN, so we replace out the need for premium CDNs. And at a much lower cost. So you'll be surprised when you start working with some of your customers that because the stack is integrated and because they're not having to buy hosting plus CDN plus WAF plus bot manager plus something else, that WebScale is this integrated stack, the cost is much more sensible for a customer base like that. We serve any cloud, so we are AWS, GCP, CenturyLink, Alibaba, you name it, we support it. And at any time. So customer doesn't need to plan and say, I'm going to get 5x the amount of traffic, please make sure my infrastructure is turned up. You don't need to call our support team, just bring the traffic and we will serve it. That's what we do. So successful e-commerce, it's very complicated. You all in this room help fill some of this, the rest of it is us, and then the customer has to do a majority of the heavy lifting. So some stats about WebScale. We serve more than 1,000 storefronts. Some of our largest brands are Fortune companies, brands that some of you may have never heard of. I had never heard of them. Companies like Watsco, companies like Dollar General. Dollar General is actually the fastest growing retailer in the US. They're opening 3 new stores a day. That's how big they are. Billions in revenue. So WebScale serves their entire storefront. In the India market, we serve brands like Carrot Lane. So all of the security on carrotlane.com is through WebScale. We serve Nullies. That's another brand that I'm sure all of you and your grandmothers have heard of. We've all shopped at Nully Silks. So this kind of gives you an idea of 100% uptime across the last 3 years that we've been doing this, and that's very creditable. Lots of page requests, lots of threats averted. So we are the security platform as well for these customers, not just the hosting. And that kind of helps you see how we do that. So really quick, our stack is cloud agnostic, any cloud provider, any web application. Now I will say about 75% of our business is probably Magento stores. We serve Magento Community, Magento Enterprise, 1.x, 2.x, you name it, we're fine with it. We also have the largest WordPress WooCommerce site in the world that runs on WebScale, a company called JM Bullion. And we have other Drupal sites, Joomla sites, Ruby on Rails, and everything in between. The security is built in, so right from file integrity monitoring to application security to a firewall to a bot mitigation solution, the WebScale stack handles all this. So a customer doesn't need to go out and acquire all these pieces. We actually provide the entire stack. The 100% uptime, so we are the load balancer, we are the autoscaler. If any of you are already using cloud services, you know these terms. You don't need to pay separately to the cloud service provider. It's all integrated into the WebScale stack. And then we are the CDN. So we do the caching, we do the dynamic site caching. It's not additional cost. Every customer gets access to everything. That's the beauty of the WebScale stack. We make the cloud consumable. So if you remember all those traditional world, I'm that old that I actually remember selling hosting like that. And we actually have a WebScale convert stack that does everything. So we are, again, the firewall, the load balancer, and everything in between. And we replace out the need for traditional hosting. The 1,000+ storefronts, some of them you all will recognize. I was just talking to one of the gentlemen in South Africa. There's actually 2 brands here, Amped Innovation and Brazen Things, that we serve even in country in South Africa. So we serve customers in 7 countries. We're pretty much a US-focused business right now. We have a handful of customers in the India market. We actually have our largest team in India. So that's been our focus, but kind of gives you an idea of some household brands right on the top. So if you're into JaguarUSA.com and you're buying t-shirts and jackets from them, you're probably buying WebScale's platform. If you're buying tickets at corporateboxoffice.com, you're going through the WebScale platform. So it kind of gives you a range of who we serve. And if you all have any questions, there's many, many different ways to connect with us. I think most importantly, if you all want to get a copy of the report, which will be coming out soon, please drop your business card with Shehzad and we'll make sure we get it to you. And that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions. Go for it. Mm-hmm. Yes.
there could be many other topics in the back. So, like, does auto scaling solve the performance?
So I know my CTO will not like this answer, but we actually believe that if you throw enough infrastructure at the problem, that yes, auto scaling can solve the problem. Now, it's a horrible way of solving it. It's like a truly bad way of solving it, but we have had customers. I can remember at least two brands, one in India and one in the US, that were fix it, fix it, fix it, and we threw so much infrastructure at it that their site became fast. Because what in essence happens is if you think of an infrastructure, a piece of infrastructure, and you say, okay, for this application, which is really poor quality, I can run 5 sessions on one server. Therefore, to serve their entire site peacefully, I'm going to have 5 sessions per server and that many servers, because we can scale to infinity. I mean, we'll scale as much as the cloud provider availability zone or no. But what we do is we have a really interesting tool called our traffic viewer, and I think that's the most powerful insight that our support team used to scour log lines to find where the slowness is. Now we have our traffic viewer that really analyzes the entire log infrastructure of a site and says, by referrer tag, by slowness, by page speed.
So the client can actually use that log and do something.
Exactly. So the entire insight into the back end of your site, like you as a developer, I'll say more than 70% of the logos you saw up here came in through some developer partner or the other. Large digital agencies across the US, across Europe, that reach out to us because we make their life easier. Because we make sure that after they have the customer, whether it is managing their development environment, their staging environment, it's their continuous delivery, it's their traffic visualization, all of those pieces, we're able to make sure that they have complete insight. And then if they want to, like sometimes we'll get a customer that says, I want to flip this old site to a new site at 3 a.m. We have 3 shifts of support, so we can make it happen. Whereas if we were not in the mix, they would have to do it in the middle of their night, which is inconvenient. So there's a lot of reasons to work with WebScale beyond what you see here. Go ahead, please. And cost? So as you auto scale, obviously you're bringing up additional infrastructure from a GCP or an Amazon or CenturyLink. So obviously the cost goes up. But our assumption is that you're auto scaling because you're getting more traffic to the site. Now, if we actually have a research report that if you're interested in where we baked off against all of the different cloud providers' native auto scaling functionality, WebScale scales out faster and more aggressively, but we also scale in more aggressively than anybody else because we scale based on response time, right? Which is in addition to CPU and memory. Now, cloud providers also do auto scaling, but what they do is they do what's called reactive auto scaling. So your site slows down, your memory utilization goes up, your CPU utilization goes up, then they react, and then by the time you scale, as you all know, it takes 3 to 5 minutes. Whereas with WebScale, what we do is we have a pre-imaged version of the site that as soon as the scaling happens, we scale within a minute, minute and a quarter, and we scale very aggressively. So you don't have to scale 1 server at a time, you can scale 5 servers, 10 servers. But a lot of our customers are like, if I have the traffic, please scale, because I'm getting the revenue. So I don't want any user to have bad experience. So to answer your question, of course, the cost goes up because we're scaling our infrastructure, but it makes sense to scale out. And in fact, we are very aggressive, both scale out and scale in. So I'll give you an idea, right? I've been working for traditional players for most of my career. So I used to work at Akamai, for example. A customer that's probably spending X with Akamai will spend like 1/10 of an X or 5%, 10% of an X. And the reason for that is large customers will buy all of these pieces separately. With WebScale, it's all one convert stack. For us, it's all software as a service. So we're not spending more money to provide additional services. For us, the biggest benefit is we are the origin. So we prefer to fix problems in the origin and focus on the infrastructure, and then everything else for us is the data plane software that sits in front of the site. So the cost benefits are huge. Now, having said that, right, it also depends on the site, because sometimes we'll sign up a site and their code is so bad that their cost may be the same. Like we may not be able to give them any savings, but we give them insight. Like in the past, they may not know why their site is bad. We're able to tell them why their site is bad. We're able to work with the agency partner to show them where the problems are. So we're on their side, right? I don't know if that answered your question, but it's a range. Like I don't want to say we are 10% of the cost because sometimes we're not. Thank you.